The drawer creaked, a sound like a whisper from the past, as Eleanor's trembling fingers brushed against the worn wood. Her wheelchair wobbled slightly, the dim light of the nursing home's common room casting long shadows across her frail frame. She was 92, and every movement felt like a rebellion against time itself. Eleanor's eyes, clouded but sharp with memory, fixed on the volunteer kneeling beside her. The girl, Lily, barely 20, had a smile that reminded Eleanor of spring, bright, fleeting, and full of promises yet to be broken. "Lily, dear," Eleanor said, her voice a fragile thread. "Open that drawer for me, would you? There's something I need you to see." Lily hesitated, her hands hovering over the drawer. The nursing home, Whispering Pines, was a place of routine meals at precise hours, bingo on Thursdays, and the soft hum of forgotten lives. But Eleanor was different. She didn't just sit and stare like the others. She remembered. And today, her urgency was a spark in the stillness. Lily pulled the drawer open, revealing a folded piece of cloth, its edges frayed but its deep navy hue still vibrant. It was a man's jacket, meticulously preserved, smelling faintly of cedar and time. "Put it on," Eleanor whispered, her gaze distant, as if seeing someone else in Lily's place. It was his. "My Thomas's." Lily unfolded the jacket, her fingers brushing the brass buttons. It was heavy, tailored for a man with broad shoulders and a life full of purpose. She slipped it over her volunteer smock, the sleeves swallowing her slight frame. Eleanor's eyes glistened, and for a moment, the room wasn't just a room, it was a portal to 1945, to a world where Thomas stood tall, laughing under a summer sky. "Tell me about him," Lily said softly, sitting cross-legged on the floor, the jacket pooling around her. She wasn't just humoring an old woman. She was drawn in, caught by the weight of Eleanor's gaze. Eleanor leaned back, her hands folding over the blanket draped across her lap. "Thomas was a dreamer," she began, her voice gaining strength. "He wasn't rich, wasn't famous, but he had a way of making the world feel bigger. We met in '42, during the war. I was a typist at the factory, and he was a mechanic, fixing planes that would carry boys to places they'd never come back from." She paused, her fingers tracing the edge of her wheelchair. "He wore that jacket every day? Said it was his lucky charm. When he proposed, he didn't have a ring, just this jacket and a promise to build a life together. We were going to see the world, Lily. Paris, Rome, maybe even the pyramids. But then the war called him, and promises, they don't always survive." Lily's throat tightened. She'd heard stories like this before: war, loss, love cut short, but Eleanor's voice carried a rawness that made it feel new. "Did he?" Lily started, unsure if she should ask. "He came back," Eleanor said, her smile bittersweet. "But not whole. The war took his legs, and the shrapnel took his dreams. He never walked again, but he never stopped loving me. We made a life, small but ours. This jacket, he wore it until the day he died, 50 years ago." The room felt heavier now, the air thick with the weight of a life lived and lost. Lily touched the jacket's collar, imagining Thomas's hands calloused from work, his eyes bright with hope. "Why do you want me to wear it?" she asked. Eleanor's gaze softened. "Because you're young, and you're kind, and you remind me of what it felt like to believe in tomorrow. I want you to feel what he felt: strong, alive, ready to take on the world." Lily didn't know what to say. She was just a college kid, volunteering to pad her resume, not expecting to carry someone else's history. But the jacket felt like more than fabric. It was a story, a life, a love that refused to fade. As the afternoon sun dipped below the window, casting golden streaks across the floor, a new voice interrupted. "Eleanor, you telling stories again?" It was Mrs. Carter, another resident, her walker scraping against the linoleum. She was a wiry woman, her hair a shock of white, her eyes sharp with mischief. "Don't let her fool you, girl," Mrs. Carter said, winking at Lily. "Eleanor's got secrets in that drawer, things even Thomas didn't know." Lily's eyes widened, glancing at Eleanor, who stiffened but said nothing. Mrs. Carter's words hung in the air, a twist in the tale that made Lily's heart race. What secrets? What could a 92-year-old woman, confined to a wheelchair, possibly hide? Eleanor's lips pressed into a thin line, but her eyes betrayed a flicker of fear, or was it defiance? "Some things," she said quietly, "are better left in the past." Lily wanted to ask more, but the moment was broken by the dinner bell. Mrs. Carter shuffled off, muttering about meatloaf, leaving Lily and Eleanor in a silence that felt alive with questions. Lily folded the jacket carefully, placing it back in the drawer, but her fingers lingered. She wasn't sure what she'd stumbled into, but she knew one thing. Eleanor's story wasn't just about love. There was something deeper, something untold. Lily couldn't shake the feeling that the jacket held more than memories. That night, as she lay in her dorm room, the navy fabric seemed to linger in her mind, its weight pressing against her thoughts. She saw Eleanor's eyes, the way they'd flickered when Mrs. Carter spoke of secrets, and she wondered what truths lay buried in that drawer. The next morning, Lily returned to Whispering Pines, her volunteer shift starting early. The nursing home was quiet, the kind of quiet that felt like it was holding its breath. She found Eleanor in her room, not the common area, staring out a window that framed a gray, rain-streaked sky. The drawer was closed, but the jacket's presence seemed to fill the space. "Good morning, Eleanor," Lily said, her voice soft but deliberate. She sat beside the older woman, her backpack slung over one shoulder. "I couldn't stop thinking about Thomas and what Mrs. Carter said." Eleanor's hands tightened on her blanket, but she didn't turn from the window. "Mrs. Carter talks too much," she said, her tone clipped. "Always has. She thinks she knows everything." Lily leaned forward, her curiosity outweighing her caution. "Does she? Know something, I mean?" Eleanor's gaze snapped to Lily, sharp and searching. For a moment, Lily thought she'd overstepped, but then Eleanor sighed, her shoulders sagging. "You're persistent, aren't you? Like I was once." She gestured to the drawer. "Open it again. There's more than just the jacket." Lily's heart skipped. She knelt, pulling the drawer open with care. Beneath the jacket, tucked into a corner, was a small, leather-bound notebook, its pages yellowed and edges curling. She glanced at Eleanor, who nodded faintly. Lily opened it, revealing tight, slanted handwriting Thomas's, she assumed, but some entries were in a different script, lighter and more delicate. "Eleanor's. It's our story," Eleanor said, her voice barely above a whisper. "But not the one I told you yesterday. The one I didn't want to remember." Lily read the first page, dated June 1943. It was a love letter, Thomas's words to Eleanor, full of longing and promises of a future after the war. But as she turned the pages, the tone shifted. There were lists, names, dates, places, code words like sparrow and lantern. Lily's breath caught. "Eleanor, what is this?" Eleanor's eyes closed, as if bracing herself. Thomas wasn't just a mechanic. He was a spy, Lily, for the Allies. And I helped him. The revelation hit like a thunderclap. Lily stared at the notebook, then at Eleanor, who suddenly seemed less like a frail old woman and more like a figure from a history book. "A spy," Lily repeated, her voice barely audible. "You mean, like secret missions?" Eleanor nodded, her expression a mix of pride and pain. "We passed messages through the factory. I typed reports, hid them in supply crates. Thomas carried them to the right people. That jacket, it wasn't just his lucky charm. It had hidden pockets, places to smuggle papers. We were young, reckless, and in love with the idea of saving the world." Lily's mind raced. She'd pictured Thomas as a war hero in the traditional sense, brave, but ordinary. Not this. Not a man who risked everything in the shadows. And Eleanor, quiet, wheelchair-bound Eleanor, had been his partner in it all. "Why didn't you tell anyone?" Lily asked, turning the notebook's pages, each one a glimpse into a life of danger and sacrifice. Eleanor's laugh was dry, almost bitter. "Who would believe me now? An old woman with nothing but stories? Besides, after the war, Thomas made me promise to let it die with him. He said the world didn't need to know our secrets, just our love." Lily was about to ask more when a knock interrupted. A man stood in the doorway, his suit crisp but his face weathered, like he'd seen too many years and not enough kindness. "Mrs. Grayson," he said, addressing Eleanor. "I'm Daniel Holt, historian. I'm writing a book on wartime espionage, and I heard, well, rumors about you and Thomas." Lily froze, the notebook heavy in her hands. Eleanor's face paled, but her jaw set with a stubbornness that belied her age. "Rumors," she said flatly. "That's all they are." Daniel stepped closer, his eyes locking on the notebook. "I've tracked down others who worked with you. They mentioned a couple at the factory, codenamed Sparrow and Lantern. I think that was you. The air in the room crackled with tension. Lily looked between Eleanor and Daniel, her heart pounding. This was the twist she hadn't seen coming. A stranger, unearthing a past Eleanor had buried for decades. Was he a threat, or a chance for Eleanor's story to finally be told? I don't know what you're talking about, Eleanor said, but her voice wavered. She reached for the notebook, her hands shaking. Lily, put that away. Lily hesitated, caught between loyalty to Eleanor and the pull of a truth that could rewrite history. She closed the notebook but didn't return it to the drawer. Instead, she held it close, her mind spinning with questions. Who was Daniel Holt, really? And why now? After all these years, was Eleanor's secret coming to light? Lily's fingers tightened around the notebook, its worn leather warm against her skin. She stood between Eleanor and Daniel Holt, the historian's presence filling the small room with an unfamiliar weight. Eleanor's eyes, usually so steady, darted toward the drawer, as if she could will the past back into its hiding place. Mrs. Grayson, Daniel said, his voice calm but insistent. I'm not here to cause trouble. I've spent years piecing together stories like yours, unsung heroes who changed the war from the shadows. If you were Sparrow or Lantern, your story deserves to be told. Eleanor's laugh was sharp, almost a cough. Deserves? Young man, I've lived long enough to know the world doesn't care about deserves. It cares about headlines, and mine's not one of them. Lily's heart ached at the resignation in Eleanor's voice, but she couldn't let it go. Eleanor, she said softly, if this is true, if you and Thomas did these things, people should know. It's not just your story. It's history. Eleanor's gaze softened, but only for a moment. History, she murmured. History forgets the ones who don't shout. Thomas and I, we didn't do it for glory. We did it because it was right. Daniel pulled a chair closer, his movements careful, like approaching a skittish animal. I've found records, he said, pulling a folder from his satchel. Coded messages from the factory where you worked. They mention a woman who typed reports, slipped them to a mechanic. The dates match your time there. And this, he opened the folder, revealing a grainy photo of a young couple, the man in a familiar navy jacket, the woman with Eleanor's sharp cheekbones. This is you, isn't it? Lily gasped, her eyes locking on the photo. Eleanor, young and radiant, stood beside Thomas, his arm around her, both of them smiling like the world hadn't yet broken them. The jacket was unmistakable, its brass buttons glinting even in the faded image. Eleanor's hands trembled as she took the photo, her fingers brushing over Thomas's face. Where did you get this? She whispered. A collector, Daniel said. Someone who saved everything from the factory before it was torn down. I've been chasing your story for years, Eleanor. You and Thomas weren't just cogs in the war machine. You saved lives, pilots, soldiers, civilians. Your messages helped crack enemy codes. Lily's mind reeled. She looked at Eleanor, trying to reconcile the frail woman in the wheelchair with the spy in the photo. Why didn't you ever tell anyone? She asked again, her voice breaking. You could have been a hero. Eleanor's eyes filled with tears, but her voice was steady. Heroes don't always get happy endings, Lily. Thomas came home, but the war followed him. Nightmares, pain, the way people looked at him like he was less because he couldn't walk. I didn't want to be a hero. I just wanted him. The room fell silent, the weight of Eleanor's words settling over them. Daniel leaned back, his expression softer now, less like a historian and more like a man moved by a story he hadn't expected to feel. I'm sorry, he said. I didn't mean to dredge up pain. But your story, it could inspire people. Show them what courage looks like. Eleanor shook her head. Courage isn't what you think. It's not loud or flashy. It's doing what's right, even when it costs you everything. She looked at Lily, her eyes fierce. That's why I gave you the jacket. To remind you that strength isn't in the spotlight. It's in the quiet moments, the choices no one sees. Lily clutched the notebook tighter, her heart torn. She wanted to protect Eleanor, to keep her secrets safe, but she also felt the pull of Daniel's words. What if Eleanor's story could inspire others? What if it could give her the recognition she'd never sought? Before she could speak, a new voice cut through the tension. Eleanor, you old fox, still keeping everyone on their toes. It was Mrs. Carter again, her walker clicking as she shuffled into the room. But this time, she wasn't alone. A woman in her 60s followed, her face lined but kind, her eyes scanning the room with quiet intensity. This is my daughter, Sarah, Mrs. Carter said, her grin sly. She's got something to add to your little history lesson. Sarah stepped forward, holding a small metal box. My mother told me about you, Eleanor, she said. About the factory, the messages. I didn't believe her until I found this in her attic. She opened the box, revealing a stack of letters, their edges brittle but the handwriting unmistakable Eleanor's. Lily's breath caught. Another twist, another layer to Eleanor's story. What are these? She asked, her voice barely a whisper. Sarah smiled, but there was sadness in it. Proof, she said. Proof that my mother was part of it, too. She wasn't just a bystander. She helped you and Thomas, didn't she? Eleanor's eyes widened, her hands gripping the photo. Clara, she whispered, using Mrs. Carter's first name. You kept them? Mrs. Carter nodded, her mischief replaced by something deeper. I wasn't going to let you carry all that weight alone, Ellie. We were a team, even if no one else knew. The room felt alive with history, with secrets spilling out like light through cracked shutters. Lily looked at the notebook, the photo, the letters, and realized she was holding pieces of a puzzle bigger than she'd imagined. Eleanor wasn't just a woman with a love story. She was a quiet hero, part of a network of ordinary people who'd done extraordinary things. The metal box sat on Eleanor's lap, its contents spilling a past that had been locked away for decades. Lily stood frozen, the notebook still in her hands, as Mrs. Carter Clare and her daughter Sarah watched Eleanor with a mix of reverence and regret. Daniel Holt, the historian, scribbled notes furiously, his earlier confidence replaced by awe. Clara, Eleanor said, her voice trembling but strong. Why now? After all these years, why bring this up? Clara leaned on her walker, her eyes glinting with the fire of a younger woman. Because I'm tired, Ellie. Tired of pretending we were just factory girls, typing and filing like the world wasn't burning. Sarah found those letters, and I knew it was time. You deserve to be remembered, not just for Thomas, but for you. Lily opened one of the letters, her hands careful with the brittle paper. It was addressed to Lantern, written in code, but the signature was Clara's. Instructions for a drop-off, a warning about a suspected traitor in the factory. Lily's heart raced. You were all spies? She asked, looking between Eleanor and Clara. Not spies like in the movies, Clara said with a chuckle. We didn't have fancy gadgets or secret lairs. We were just us. Women who saw a chance to make a difference and took it. Eleanor's eyes were distant, lost in memory. Clara was our lookout, she said. She'd distract the foreman, flirt a little, while I typed the reports and Thomas hid them in that jacket. We thought we were invincible, until we weren't. Lily's mind flashed to the jacket, its hidden pockets now making sense. She glanced at Daniel, who was listening intently, his pen paused. What happened? She asked, her voice soft, almost afraid of the answer. Eleanor's fingers traced the edge of the metal box. There was a raid, she said. 1944. Someone tipped off the factory manager thought we were stealing supplies, not passing secrets. They searched everything, nearly caught Thomas with a coded message. Clara saved us. She caused a scene, spilled coffee all over the manager's desk, gave us time to hide the evidence. Clara smirked. I was good at making a mess. But it wasn't enough. Eleanor continued, her voice breaking. They suspected Thomas. He took the blame to protect me and Clara. The military police questioned him for days. He never broke, but it cost him. The stress, the fear it broke something in him. When he went to war after that, he wasn't the same. Lily's chest tightened. She could see it now, Thomas, wearing that jacket, carrying the weight of secrets and sacrifice. And Eleanor, left behind, holding on to love and guilt. You never told anyone, Lily said, more to herself than to Eleanor. Not even after he died. Eleanor shook her head. It was our pact. Thomas said the world didn't need our story, it needed to move on. But maybe, she looked at Clara, then at Sarah, then at Daniel. Maybe he was wrong. Daniel cleared his throat, his voice gentle. Eleanor, Clara, if you'll let me, I can tell your story. Not for headlines, but for truth. For the people who need to know what courage looks like. Lily watched Eleanor, waiting for her answer. The old woman's hands stilled, her eyes searching the room as if looking for Thomas. Finally, she nodded. Do it, she said. But tell it right. Tell it for him. Clara reached out, her hand resting on Eleanor's. And for us, she added. Lily felt tears prick her eyes. She handed the notebook to Daniel, along with the letters from Sarah's box. "You'll need these," she said. "But be careful with them. They're more than history." Daniel took them, his expression solemn. "I promise," he said. "This story will honor you both." As the room settled into a quiet hum, Lily looked at Eleanor, who seemed lighter, as if sharing her secret had lifted a weight she'd carried for decades. Clara, too, looked at peace, her mischief replaced by pride. Sarah smiled at her mother, a silent acknowledgement of a legacy uncovered. Lily stepped back, her role in this moment feeling both small and profound. She'd come to Whispering Pines for volunteer hours, but she'd found something bigger, a reminder that heroism wasn't in grand gestures, but in the quiet, steadfast choices of ordinary people. The jacket, the notebook, the letters, they were relics of a love and a courage that had shaped the world, even if the world never knew. As she left the room, the rain outside had stopped, and a faint rainbow arched over the nursing home's garden. Lily smiled, thinking of Eleanor and Thomas, of Clara and the secrets they'd kept. She didn't know what Daniel's book would say, or if it would change anything, but she knew one thing. She'd never look at an old jacket or an old woman the same way again.